Welcome to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. I came across this very interesting article and I wanted to share it with you because the title alone basically says it all. The Rings of Power has inexplicably terrible writing. I couldn't agree more. And this article is very well written. This is coming from Forbes, of all places. The shill media is finally starting to convey the truth about Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power. I've come to a sad realization. The creators of Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power know how to create spectacle, but they don't know how to tell a good story. Unfortunately, The Rings of Power is written so poorly, it defies even my worst fears. Oh yes, I was awed and impressed by the opening 2 episodes just like many others. But my, how quickly a badly written TV series can wear out its welcome once the shimmer fades. All that glitters is not gold is the old aphorism. But the Rings of Power knows only how to glitter. And it's certainly not gold. It knows how to shoot pretty slow-motion shots of elves on horses or orcs leaping through the trees. It gets the giant statues of ancient elven kings in shining cities just right. It has a sweeping score that's lovely to listen to, but is, like the show's Melodrama, perhaps a little too incessant. This is a show of spectacle, and it gets the spectacle mostly right. The problem is everything else. Galadriel's adventure in Numenor is honestly just embarrassing. She arrived there after being rescued and effectively just bullied everyone in her path like the elven version of a steamroller. In other words, she was being strong woman Galadriel, as everybody, including myself, has been calling her. The Queen Regent has her hands full from the moment Galadriel barges through the door, and soon she's demanding to see the king, then asking for an army. Well, yes, because she's strong woman, she's Galadriel, she can do anything. I'm surprised she really wants an army, because honestly, why does she really want any men to do what she clearly can do as the super Mary Sue version of Galadriel that she truly is? The thing that the showrunners Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne created. Muriel has to lock her up and then pack her off back to the elves just to get her to stop. Then, thanks to petals falling from a tree, she decides to take her back and commit her people, who moments earlier were all but chanting "Death to the elves," to a war in a strange land. Everything taking place in Numenor is just a shortcut for the plot. Move the plot forward at all costs, no matter how many characters are butchered in the process. Instead of actual character drama, the creators of Rings of Power, the very inexperienced J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, simply make everyone bicker and argue with one another all the time. Whether that's Isildur and his father and friends, Elrond and Durin, Nori and the village elders, Bronwyn and the village idiots, or Galadriel and, well, everybody. All anyone seems to do is argue. Gee, this just really sounds like great writing, doesn't it? Yeah, no, it doesn't. It sounds boring. It sounds predictable. If you know how these people are always going to act, you've already got the show figured out. The most boring movies and the most boring TV shows quite often are the ones where you can literally predict everything that's about to happen. And that's what this sounds like. The people Galadriel wants to go save are evil and stupid, and some of them seem ready to throw in with Sauron at the drop of a pin. But for some reason, we're supposed to care about Galadriel's quest to go fight to save them from the enemy? Yeah, because this writing really sucks. I don't mind Elrond and Durin and Durin's wife Disa, but their story is spinning its wheels compared to everything else. That would work and could work great if the rest of the show was willing to also take its time a bit. I'm not upset with this show for being slow. I'd be perfectly happy with a slow show that did a good job of developing its characters. This show is tedious and rushed all at the same time, which really sounds like a total contradiction, yet that's what he's saying. This is his impression of the Rings of Power. And none of the reviews that I've been reading written by real people have said anything good. Nothing. And while I like the Harfoots, they too have been written into a very strange corner. No one walks alone, the little folk chant, while leaving their lame and their elderly, their sick and their maimed behind to suffer and die. Gee, that sounds really compassionate, doesn't it? Then there's the new villain, Addai. I was excited about him at first. He seemed like a pretty intriguing bad guy until he let Arondir go to deliver a message to the humans, which, if you ask me, may well be just because. Just because the writers couldn't be bothered to come up with a more clever way to get Arondir out of there, I guess, way to undermine the very tension you were hoping to create. In other words, they're clueless. We have spectacle, though. Lots of big dramatic moments with literally no build-up to them. Arondir is set free, rescues Theo just in the nick of time, and they run through the woods directly to where Bronwyn finds them. Gee, that doesn't sound like it was all written to just be perfect, was it? And escape dozens of orcs because they shoot arrows like stormtroopers, shoot blasters, and run about as fast as those bounty hunters from Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't think you liked Obi-Wan Kenobi either. We're supposed to remember Boromir at this point, right? Lots of little callbacks to the Jackson trilogy. Lots of little reminders that those movies were far, far better. Well, yes, nothing can compare to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. That was brilliantly done. And he did his very best to be true to Tolkien, unlike Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne. Nothing is earned in the Rings of Power, neither the emotional nor the epic. Things just happen because the writers want those things to happen. Something happens and then something else happens. There are no real consequences, no real hard spots to get out of. Just a string of events unfolding, frictionless and boring. Gee, that sounds a lot like Star Wars 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which was truly deplorable and, in my opinion, an unwatchable movie. Yes, this is the same sort of description I provided in my video that was about my list of unwatchable movies. My God. Galadriel gets her army just by being a jerk for a couple of days, and what now? We're going to war. The problem is, we don't care. Arondir gets back to Bronwyn, and his tidings are very dire. The problem is, we don't care. Yeah, he's part of the audience just like everyone else. He doesn't care because the writers of this show, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, have failed to make the characters in any way interesting or to have the audience actually care about them. This is what happens when you put two completely inexperienced writers in charge of a show that is costing hundreds of millions of dollars to produce. It is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. This is bad writing, pure and simple. Bad characterization. Choppy dialogue. Characters who don't make sense and clearly dislike one another as much as we dislike them. Everything feels forced and contrived, especially in the Galadriel storyline. There's the word, contrived, which is exactly what the problem was with Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Palpatine, as it really should have been called. That was such a horrible movie. And here we see the same problems occurring again. I'm trying to envision the writing process here. How they came up with this story of all the stories they could spin. They had carte blanche to make up whatever Middle-earth fable they wanted, and they gave us this cobbled together nonsense with a cast of characters we can barely stand, tossed haphazardly into predicaments and events that ooze fake gravitas, but have no real stakes. That is brilliant. This is why I wanted to keep reading, because this guy really, he knows how to write, unlike J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. I don't get it. I really don't. I really wanted to like this show and was completely willing to suspend my disbelief and treat it like expensive fan fiction, but this feels cheap. This was a show I was eagerly looking forward to watching with my kids. Now I doubt I'll bother. That's about as damning a verdict as I can muster. How to tell a good story. All the money in the world can't save bad writing. No amount of spectacle will ever be able to paper over a lousy script. For all its spectacle, The Rings of Power lacks something precious, a sense of adventure. Here's a thought. Perhaps the show's creators, Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne, should have started smaller, picked one or two of these stories and planted them, tended to them, and given them room to breathe and time to grow. Develop the smaller batch of characters and give us a reason to care about and root for them, or loathe and despise them, or simply feel for them in some way, instead of not feeling absolutely anything at all. This is what he's saying. There is nothing to feel for these characters. They're just there. They are caricatures. They mean nothing to him. How can you watch a show if you have no emotional connection to it whatsoever? You can't. Next, put those characters into tight spots that create tension. Give them tough choices that are as painful for us to watch as they are for the characters to make. And move the story along through organic character motivations and interactions that make sense and unfold naturally. Yeah, don't force things, don't contrive things. This is all writing 101. And I don't think Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne understand that very basic concept. Slowly build toward the epic, era-spanning, globe-trotting, world-altering stuff instead of rushing at it all at once. The adventure is in the heart as much as it is along the winding roads and crooked vales and among the high towers of warlike men. In other words, tell a good story first. Then let the story find its way into your epic fantasy, not the other way around. But guess what? Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne don't know how to do that. And you know why? Because they have virtually no experience writing. I'm not kidding. Let's go and find out why I'm saying that. So here we are on the IMDb page for Patrick McKay. And let's take a look and see how much writing experience does Patrick McKay actually have. So let's just scroll down this page right here. And here it says he has 3 writing credits. An upcoming Flash Gordon movie, which I'm sure isn't going to be that good given what's been going on with The Rings of Power. Then his writing with The Rings of Power. And then before that, the only thing that Patrick McKay has done before The Rings of Power was some uncredited writing for Star Trek Beyond 6 years ago in 2016. Nothing else. That's it. And I looked online. I tried to see, did he write any plays? Did he write anything that would have been done, like for a stage production? Nothing. There's hardly any information for him online. And it's the same thing for J.D. Payne. So let's take a look at his. So here is J.D. Payne's IMDb page, and we'll scroll down and take a look at his. And lo and behold, it's basically the exact same stuff as Patrick McKay. The only thing that he has also worked on before The Rings of Power was Star Trek Beyond in 2016. So between the two of them, they have practically no writing experience. Certainly nothing for a streamed TV show. They have a small amount of uncredited writing for a movie that was done 6 years ago. That's it. These guys were not qualified to take on the writing of a show that is costing Amazon hundreds of millions of dollars. Why would they hire these guys? What made them think that hiring completely inexperienced writers would be the right thing to do? This is just ridiculous. Were they really good friends with somebody at Amazon? They have no experience. Was nobody else available? Did nobody else have any actual interest in being involved with this show? I mean, that's the other possibility. Maybe these two are the only ones they could get because these two were the only ones who were actually interested. And you wonder why the writing in The Lord of the Rings or Rings of Power is as bad as it is. Coming back to the Forbes article, I just wanted to say that the author, who is really good, he's a really good writer, he goes into quite a bit of detail with Tolkien lore. And he also gives a very good reason why J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay should not have made Galadriel their main character. The Forbes article author understands Tolkien lore a heck of a lot better than J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. I mean, this is how bad this show is. And this is why people like me are so disgusted with it, because it is insulting to the memory of Tolkien and to the hundreds of millions of fans that love what Tolkien wrote. They should have given this a lot more thought. They should have focused more on creating interesting characters that people would have been drawn to watch, rather than trying to make it this massive, overblown epic that is bringing in far too many things at the same time and completely screwing up Tolkien's timeline. This has been my opinion of the show the whole time. I don't like it, and I'm not the only one who doesn't like it. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to see more of our videos in the future and help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.